Namaste. In our previous segment, Jagad Guru explained that there are two fundamental elements, matter and life. Next, he describes how the proof of this simple reality can be seen in examining how matter behaves in the presence of life versus in the absence of life.
Now what we're going to do is go over some of the main distinctions that scientists have come to understand, come to know, come to appreciate, the difference, the way that matter behaves when it's in the presence of life, and the way it behaves in a completely different way when it's not in the presence of life. Okay? So there are great distinctions here between the way matter behaves in the presence of the life particle and the way it behaves when the life particle, the life force, is no longer present. The first distinction is that matter that's influenced by the element life is characterized by metabolism, whereas matter that's by itself is not. Now, if you go and feed a corpse, it's another example. You try and give a banana to a corpse, not interested. He's not gonna eat the banana either, okay? Another point is that you won't find any bedpans in a morgue, okay? Okay? Now the second distinction is that matter under the influence of life is characterized by thermodynamically unstable states, whereas matter by itself is characterized by thermodynamically stable states. Basically, an example of this, who here has seen a dead cat or rat on the side of the road, you know, a dog? And what? What's your reaction? Ooh, stink, yeah? It stinks. Why does it stink? It's decaying. It's decaying. Matter by itself doesn't decay. See? It doesn't decay. So something, if you've observed that breakdown or a compost pile, you know, if you observe this, then you have directly perceived the thermodynamically unstable breaking down to a thermodynamically stable condition. You're a scientist. You're observing this phenomena, and you can recognize it. Oh, that is and this is, stinks. It falls apart, and there's heat, right? You know, in Vietnam, when the war was going on there between the United States and Vietnam, some people were totally blown away. And all battlefields, all wars are like this. The soldiers, one of the heaviest things you don't see in the TV screen, you know? It's like you can see all the dead bodies on the TV screen, but you can't smell them. The smell is just heavy, just too much for people. They just, bodies rotting on a battlefield. Very complex thing is breaking down to very simple thing. Thermodynamically, in other words, the molecules are in a very complex structure. And when there's life present, the molecules are a very complex structure, and they're held in this complex, unstable condition as long as the life particle's there. And when the life particle leaves, then all these molecules start breaking down to less complex structures. And that breakdown is what's causing this is called decay, okay? The third distinction is that matter influenced by the element life grows by an intricate internal construction process involving elaborate chemical transformations, whereas matter by itself grows by a simple accumulation process involving little or no change in molecular structure. In other words, for matter to grow, it has to accumulate from outside. And it's a very simple process, and there's no drastic chemical transformation going on. Like, you know, if for a mountain to get bigger, things come from the outside. You pile things on, a pile of clothes or a pile of bricks, right? And it grows, right? That's how you make things grow. Buildings grow like that, okay? So buildings grow differently than people. It's not like, for example, you can put a skyscraper up by feeding it bananas. It's not like you get a little skyscraper and you feed it bananas, you see, and then it gradually grows into a big skyscraper. No, you got to get cranes and stuff and pile things on, right? That's how skyscrapers grow. See, but living where there's life, it doesn't grow like that, right? So The fourth distinction is that matter influenced by the element life exhibits a precisely regulated flow of matter, which with highly organized process or pattern is involved in the flow of matter by itself. Doesn't read right. Somebody typed this wrong, or typesetter here. When life is present, there's a highly organized flow of matter. And when matter is not, when there's no life present in that matter, then you won't find this characteristic. For example, matter by itself, you'll find a flow of matter. For example, a river going from the mountain to the sea. Okay? It's a very simple thing. But in the body, the human body, for example, you got the blood flowing through all the veins and arteries. You got a whole... you think that, the system set up by people in cities is complex, where the water goes here and there. The human body, or any kind of body, is so complex, the flow of matter. And just the flow, just for example, just looking at the flow of matter in a cell is so complex. You will not find this when there is no life present. And the fifth distinction is that matter influenced by the element life has the ability to reproduce without loss of pattern or form, whereas matter by itself is incapable of reproduction. So, where's the mothers? Are there any mothers in here? A good example. Mothers? Mother? Huh? Devahuri? Huh? Where's your kids? Huh? Go ahead, go sit by her. He's getting older, he doesn't want to sit by her. Okay, and the one here to your left?
Yes.
And you got two more, right?
Yes.
Okay, now you figure, his is already as tall as yours, right?
Almost, yes.
See, how is that? Right? You got this thing that's 5 feet tall, right? And 140 pounds or 125 pounds or whatever. And then out of that comes another one that ends up 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall. Comes 3 more like that. So you have the original, but then the original is not reduced. You still have the original. But to create others, you get more coming from it, and yet the original is not reduced. If we applied the law of matter, the characteristic of matter to this, for you to make a kid that big, or 4 or 5 of them, would mean that you'd now be about 6 inches tall. If that. Right? Right? You have a dog. She has so many litters of puppies, 12, 16 puppies, right? And they have many of them. They do it more than once. And yet the mother dog's still there walking around. When matter is by itself, this does not happen. You don't have this. Okay? You don't find matter reproducing like that. You don't get and if you could go out and buy a car, or a couple cars, go buy 2 Volkswagens, it's not like, you're not going to have to go buy any more new cars, because they're going to make baby Volkswagens. All you got to do is buy 1 or 2, and then they make more themselves. Right? It's very obvious distinctions here. The sixth distinction is that matter in the presence of life exhibits an active resistance to changes and to attack, pressure, or force from the outside, whereas matter by itself exhibits only passive resistance. For example, you ever try to catch a roach? You go, here's a roach, walk in and you go to get it. And he runs this way, runs that way. Or he runs to you, knowing the psychology that I'm the ugliest bugger in the world. And, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run for him, and they're going to run back. Happens to me all the time. Sometimes you get these giant roaches, Try to catch him. We both, it's a big scene trying to catch us, because we're not into killing the roaches, because we know someone's in there. The whole, But anyway, you go to catch them, and sometimes they run, but then sometimes they just turn on you and run to you, and you go, ah! And you start running. These are living entities here. You don't find this kind of thing going on between two bricks. Two bricks, you don't find this kind of excitement happening. If you see an ant walking, you put your finger there, he just stops and he runs this way. Or he crawls over it. Active resistance, or he overcomes an obstacle. He walks around it or over it. This is. Seventh distinction. By the way, corpses don't have resistance either. We're running out of time here. Seventh distinction is that matter influenced by the element life is capable of self-induced movement, whereas matter by itself is not. Actually, I just talked about that one in the sixth distinction also, so that covers both. Good. And the eighth distinction, and the time is really short, is that matter under the influence of life has a high information content, whereas matter by itself has a low information content, and that's probably the most confusing thing of all this. But if you look, the information content deals, let me just put it this way. An amoeba, a living matter with a life, very small body, a little amoeba, has more information there. There's more bits of information. Information content in that amoeba is many times greater than the information in the most advanced computer. Okay? And it's because there's a life particle present. Now, we've just about run totally out of time. Let me mention that consciousness may be the most important element, which makes a distinction between matter in the presence of life and when it's not, is there in the numbers 6 and 7 that we just discussed. And that, in fact, the material theory, the theory that there's only one energy, matter, there's no material explanation. They can describe these distinctions. They can describe the distinctions between the way matter behaves at this moment and the way it behaves at another moment. Why matter behaves in one way and another way, but they can't say why that is. Why does matter behave so radically different? Why at one moment it's growing and in the next moment it's stinking and falling apart? Why are these distinctions there? There's no material explanation, but there is an explanation, and that is that the life particle is present. Life is a distinct element, and when that element, life, although not seeable with your directly, you can perceive its presence by looking at the difference between the way matter behaves when that life particle is present and when that life particle is no longer present. That's all the time we got. Thank you very much.